Have you ever felt someone see right through you? Not in a way that chills you, but one that sets you on fire, makes you feel alive again. I didn't plan for this. I didn't wake up one morning itching to claim something that wasn't mine. But life doesn't ask permission. It creeps in like rain, soaking your skin before you know you're drenched. It started with a look, just one look. Harmless, right, except that look lingered too long, heavy with intent, electric with want. And the worst part, I didn't look away. When you've been invisible for years, being seen feels like salvation. My husband David hadn't touched me in weeks. No questions about my day, my heart, my hurt. He kissed the kids goodnight, rolled over and slept. I lay there wide awake, staring into the dark, wondering when I'd vanished from his world. So when someone looked at me like I still existed, I let that moment burn. I didn't push it away. His name was Nathan, a friend of David's, but over time he became mine too, in ways that cut deeper than friendship. He didn't say much at first, but his silence spoke loud enough. He noticed when I changed my hair, wore something new, laughed too hard at a bad joke. And I noticed him noticing me. That's where it began, not with a touch or a word, but a feeling, a slow heat spreading through my chest, waking parts of me I thought were dead. I told myself it was nothing, just flattery. I'd never cross a line. But some lines don't need crossing to break. They blur until you can't see them anymore. Nathan didn't ask to touch me. He just wanted to watch. And what broke me was realizing I wanted it too. They say the most dangerous desires are the ones you never speak. Mine started in silence, in the way his eyes held mine, daring me to feel what I pretended not to. What began as curiosity unraveled into something I thought I could control until I couldn't. I'm telling you this not to confess, not to explain, but because stories like mine live in the shadows, in quiet bedrooms, in marriages that look perfect from the outside but starve within. If this feels too familiar, if something in you whispers, "I've felt that too," stay with me. This isn't just a story. It's a memory I never thought I'd speak aloud. I'm in my mid-30s, 37 now, with 2 kids, a spotless house in Charleston, South Carolina, and a heart that's been full of holes for years. David used to hold me like I was fragile, called me his calm in the chaos. Now he barely speaks unless he needs something. One hand on his phone, the other on silence. We share a bed, but we're islands. I ask about his day. He shrugs. He asks if we have toothpaste. That's the depth of it now. I told myself it's normal, marriages shift, life gets loud, kids take over. But deep down, I craved something I couldn't name. Then Nathan came along. He'd been around for years, technically David's friend, but he became mine in quiet ways. He noticed what others missed: when I got a haircut, when my eyes looked tired. He asked questions no one else bothered with, listened like it mattered. He never flirted, never crossed a line. But there was something in how he looked at me, like he saw every crack I tried to hide. Our house was too quiet, a stillness that didn't soothe but suffocated. It felt like waiting for something to break, for someone to notice the walls closing in. Dinners were silent. The kids laughed. David scrolled, I cleared plates. Sometimes I'd catch Nathan across the table, wondering if he heard the silence too. We didn't talk feelings in this house. We didn't fight. We just existed. But with him, I remembered what it felt like to be alive. One night, I caught him watching me as I laughed at something my daughter said. It wasn't a flirty look, not bold, but soft, curious, like he was memorizing a version of me no one else saw. I felt myself lean into that warmth, not physically, but in my soul. I told myself it was harmless, just friendship. But even as I said it, something stirred a hunger I hadn't felt in years. Attention, desire, recognition of who I was, who I could still be. It was just a weekend gathering, nothing special. Friends, neighbors, kids running in the backyard, fingers sticky with dirt, laughter echoing through open windows. I wore a loose dress, hair up, no makeup. But Nathan looked at me like I was something like the mess, and noise couldn't dim me. He helped grill, tease the kids, told stories that even made David crack a smile. For a while I convinced myself I imagined it the way his eyes lingered. His voice softened when he said my name, how he noticed things David never did. Like the way I rubbed my neck when I was tired or shifted when I felt unseen. As the sun dipped, people left in waves, kids' sleepy dishes stacked, leftovers packed. David vanished to his study, as always lost in his screen, his world. Then it was just me and Nathan. He offered to help clean, casual, like it was nothing. "Looks like you had a long day," he said. I should have said no, smiled politely, sent him home. Instead, I nodded. We didn't talk much, clearing the table, just the clink of dishes, the hum of the dishwasher, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down. He stood close enough for me to feel his warmth, not touching, just near. Too near. I dropped a spoon. We both bent to grab it, rising together, our eyes locking. He didn't speak, but he didn't need to. His gaze asked what my heart had been whispering for weeks. "Do you feel this too?" I looked away, pretending not to understand, but my hands shook as I turned on the faucet. He stayed wiping the counter, asking about my daughter's school, praising the food, small talk, but his tone searched for something deeper. He leaned against the counter, watching me dry the last plate. The silence wasn't awkward, wasn't loud. It was charged like the air before a storm. My heart pounded. My throat tightened, not from fear, but awareness. I told myself it was nothing, just a kind friend, a tired mom reading too much into silence. But I knew better. Something had shifted, something we weren't ready to admit. He said goodbye, no touch, no lean, just one last look before leaving. I shut the door, lingered there, hand on the knob, breathing too hard for someone who hadn't moved. That night, I slid into bed beside David. He didn't speak, didn't notice the silence pouring off me like a scream. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every second, knowing something had changed, even if we hadn't said it aloud. I didn't sleep. My body lay still, but my mind spun back to that look, that silence, that electric pull I tried to ignore. Morning came with a strange ache in my chest, not guilt, but confusion, a feeling I couldn't name. I got up before the house stirred, showered longer than usual, studied myself in the mirror. For the first time in months, I wanted to look good. I wore a dress I hadn't touched since before the kids, nothing flashy, just something that felt like me again. A little lipstick, a touch of hair, fix, just enough to feel alive. David didn't notice, sitting at the table, scrolling, sipping coffee, muttering good morning without looking up. I stood there waiting for a compliment, a glance, anything. Nothing came. Then Nathan's text arrived, simple, shattering. "You looked beautiful yesterday. I hope you know that." My heart lurched, not just from the words but because someone saw me. That was the start of the storm. I began trying again. Clothes, hair, even perfume. Not for the man I married, but for the one who noticed. I told myself it was harmless. Attention wasn't a crime. I deserved to be seen. But some days I wished David would notice, just so I'd have an excuse to stop, to pull myself back, to say, "See, I only wanted your eyes." But he didn't. He noticed the empty peanut butter jar, the rising bills, the lost remote, but never me. The more invisible I felt at home, the more alive I felt when Nathan walked in. It wasn't physical. Not yet. But I started craving things I shouldn't. His voice at the door, his glance across the lawn, the faint smile we shared in a held breath. I laughed louder when he was near fixed. My posture touched my neck while talking small things that made me feel wanted, even if just in my head. Every time he looked at me like I mattered, I hated myself a little, knowing what I was doing even as I pretended I wasn't. I was building a secret world in my heart, brick by brick, and Nathan was in it. David wasn't. I kept telling myself it was fine. It wasn't an affair, just tension, harmless warmth in a cold house. But that's the lie we tell ourselves, isn't it, that it's only real if it's physical? We're safe as long as we don't cross that line. But I'd crossed it in my mind, in my longing, and how I waited for Nathan's gaze instead of praying for David's. A movie night, just a normal thing for the kids. I texted a few people. Nathan was the only one who replied. I told myself it was no big deal, just a friend, a film. But when he showed up, the air shifted. He brought snacks, smiled as usual. But his eyes held mine in a way that wasn't casual. The kids picked a silly movie. We dimmed the lights, everyone relaxed. David sat in the armchair, scrolling, barely glancing at the screen, barely noticing the three of us in the room. I sat at one end of the couch, Nathan at the other, the kids nestled between, giggling, tossing popcorn, oblivious to the quiet danger brewing around them. I couldn't focus on the movie. I felt him, not his touch, not his breath, just his presence, like a magnetic pull I didn't want but couldn't resist. Our eyes met across the room just for a second, but it stopped everything. My heart raced, throat tightened. I looked away first because if I hadn't, I might not have. The movie ended, the kids half asleep, curled up like warm reminders of the life I'd built, the life I loved, the life I was betraying. No one moved right away. The credits rolled. David stood, muttered something about emails, and left without a goodbye. Then it was just me and Nathan in the dim room, in a silence so loud it screamed. We didn't talk. We didn't laugh. We just sat, my hands clutching the blanket like a lifeline, every part of me screaming, wanting, fearing. Then he whispered, barely audible, I didn't watch the movie. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence was louder than any reply. I stood, started clearing popcorn bowls. He followed me to the kitchen like always, but it didn't feel like always. He didn't touch me, didn't lean in, didn't confess. But the way he looked at me when I turned around said everything, everything I was afraid to hear, everything I wanted to believe. I should have told him to stop. I should have drawn a line. But I didn't, because in that moment, something unspoken passed between us, not a touch, not a kiss, but a consent. We both felt it, both waited for it, both stood too close to something we couldn't undo. He left quietly, respectfully, but the weight of that moment stayed. I locked the door, not to keep him out, but because I knew next time I might not. Deep down, beneath the guilt, beneath the fear, a small, trembling part of me hoped there'd be a next time. It was late, the house stiflingly quiet past midnight, when even the walls seemed to listen. I couldn't sleep. I paced the kitchen barefoot, holding a mug of tea I had no intention of drinking. Then came a knock, soft 3 taps, like he wasn't sure he should be there, but came anyway. I opened the door. No words, just his eyes, tired, kind, hesitant. I stepped aside. He walked in. We didn't pretend this was normal. No talk of weather movies or kids. He sat at the table. I leaned against the counter. The silence wasn't awkward, it was full, too full, heavy with everything we hadn't said. Finally, he spoke, voice low, not looking at me. You're not happy. Just that. No question, just truth dropped into the room like it had waited years to land. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. I stared at the floor, at my chipped nail polish, the frayed hem of my pajamas. "I'm tired," I said. He nodded softer than before, like he was afraid of his own voice. "I don't want to do anything," he said. "I just want to see you." I looked up slowly. "See what I whispered?" He didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't explain. "You, just you without the armor." And I broke because no one had said anything like that to me in years. Not that I was beautiful, not that I was sexy, not that he wanted me, just that he wanted to see me like a prayer, not a demand, not a fantasy. And what shattered me was knowing I wanted it too. I'd spent years being looked through, not at, and here was someone offering to witness me, asking nothing in return. I felt exposed, like my skin had been peeled back, like he could see every crack, every hurt, every silent scream I'd buried under being a wife, a mother, a ghost. I sat across from him, hands trembling. "You shouldn't say things like that," I whispered. "I know," he said, but it was said. We didn't move. We didn't touch. We didn't even breathe too loud. The room was tense, not the tension of skin on skin, but the kind that rips something deep inside you. That night, there was no physical betrayal, no stolen kiss, no hands reaching across the table. But what happened was deeper, a permission, an emotional consent to feel what we felt, to stop pretending we didn't. That was the betrayal. Because once you're seen, you can't go back to being invisible, not without bleeding. Morning came, and I couldn't look at anyone, David, Nathan, myself. I moved through the house like I was trying not to leave tracks, cooking breakfast, packing lunches, folding laundry I didn't remember washing. We didn't talk after that night. No texts, no glances at school drop-offs or in grocery store parking lots. Nathan stopped coming by, stopped offering to help with the garden, stopped lingering near the porch when David wasn't home. I avoided mirrors, not because I couldn't face what I'd done, but because I couldn't face what I wanted. David stayed the same, distant, predictable, scrolling every night, forgetting what I said that morning. But something in him shifted, just a fraction. He started watching me from the corner of his eye, noticing when I went quiet, asking once if I was okay. Just once. I said yes, because what else could I say? That I was crumbling under the weight of a conversation that wasn't about touch, but felt like it had torn me apart. The silence between us grew heavier, not the usual absence, but a presence held back. It wasn't guilt that kept me quiet. It was fear. Fear that David might ask, might look into my eyes and say, "What's wrong?" Because I didn't know how I'd answer. I was afraid if I started talking, I wouldn't stop, that I'd spill everything, not just that night, but the years leading to it, the loneliness, the ache, the slow erosion of us. But he never asked, and I never offered. Nathan faded quietly. No big talk, no goodbye. He just stopped coming, but he left something behind, a shadow in the hallway by the sink in my mind every time I reached for the light switch at night. He was gone, but I still felt him in the silences, in the places we almost crossed a line, in the breaths we held back, in the words we swallowed. My marriage didn't break, not on the surface. Dinners were cooked, bills paid, kids laughed. But something in me cracked, and no one seemed to notice. That was the worst part, not the betrayal, not the longing, but the truth that I was drowning quietly, and no one thought to ask why my smile looked tired. I kept going as a woman, a mother, a wife, but everything inside felt different. Once someone truly sees you, you can't go back to being invisible. I still wonder if betrayal needs a body or if a thought is enough. If a look that lingers too long, a silence filled with want, a heartbeat that stops for someone else counts as sin. Because I never touched him, not his hand, not his face. But I saw myself in his eyes and I wanted to stay there longer than I should. In his gaze, I wasn't tired, ordinary, forgotten. I was seen. I was felt. And for a woman invisible too long, that was revival. But what does that make me? I replay that night, the words, the pauses, the space between desire and my silence. I tell myself I didn't cross a line, but maybe I drew the line where I felt safest, where I could pretend I hadn't betrayed anyone. But I know better. I know what I felt. Sometimes the ache of what never happened hurts more than if it had. David still kisses my forehead before work, asks what we need from the store, reminds me about the electric bill. But he doesn't ask about me. He doesn't see me cry silently in the bathroom. He doesn't notice my eyes flinch when he passes, like I'm bracing for a question that never comes. Maybe that's the real betrayal, building a life where I could vanish in plain sight. Is it weakness to let your heart wander, or something deeper, softer, sadder? Is it loneliness dressed as courage? Because being wanted, truly wanted, feels like air when you're gasping. I didn't ask to be found, but once I was, I couldn't forget how it felt. Now I live between two truths, the life I chose and the one I imagined in someone else's eyes. That's a pain no one prepares you for. Have you ever wanted something so much you knew it could ruin everything, not because you're reckless or selfish, but because you're tired of being invisible, tired of giving, showing up, holding it all together while no one sees you standing there? I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't wake up wanting to destroy. But somewhere in the silence of my marriage, I started shrinking. Then someone saw me. That's all it was, not desire, not escape, just recognition. And I wonder, does that make me unfaithful or just human? Maybe you've been there, standing in a kitchen late at night, heart racing for reasons you can't say aloud, laughing too long with someone you shouldn't, waiting for a question you hope they don't ask because you don't know what you'd say. So let me ask you now, is it betrayal? Or just an unmet need wrapped in silence? Is it wrong or just true? Share your thoughts below. No judgment here, just truth. Maybe your story sounds like mine. Maybe mine echoes someone else's secret. If this touched something in you, if it made you think of a version of yourself you don't speak of, don't scroll away. Subscribe for more stories that weigh too heavy to carry alone. Hit the bell. The next one might echo something you've never dared say. And if you're still listening, thank you. Sometimes being heard is a kind of healing.